Mr. Johnson, the Tea Party movement may have a big impact on a lot of races across the country this year. It's a conservative group that claims not to be about party labels. They hate deficits. They hate higher taxes. They're strongly pro-gun, Second Amendment rights. They say they support average citizen access to public office, and they are strongly against government intrusion in our lives. And I want to know where both of you stand on those key issues that are part of the Tea Party movement.
Sure. Well, I kind of sprung on the Tea Party movement. I mean, the first political thing I ever did was I gave a speech in Oshkosh in October 2009, when they asked me as a business person to speak about the effect of government regulation on business. And so I actually gave a speech and I told that story about my daughter and defending doctors. Certainly what I see in terms of Tea Parties, you've described it pretty accurately. I mean, people, first of all, are incredibly concerned about the out-of-control spending and debt in this country, and I share that concern. That's why I'm doing this. The other thing that is certainly accurate is they are concerned about government control over our lives, government intrusion, the size of government. I think that really represents a pretty large difference between myself and Senator Feingold. I think this election really is about governing philosophy. I mean, I do believe in a small, limited government, in less government control in our lives, less spending, less taxes. And I think Senator Feingold's record has been pretty clear. He wants government control over lives. He wanted a single-payer, government-run healthcare system. He has voted for higher taxes 278 times. He likes higher spending. So since his party's taken control of Congress, our deficits have exploded. $450 billion the first year, $1.4 trillion, $1.3 trillion, and this year, you'll notice Congress didn't even have the guts to pass a budget because they didn't want their fingerprints on another budget that was going to exceed $1 trillion in deficit. So really, those are what Tea Party folks are concerned about, and I share those exact same concerns.
Mr. Feingold?
I've been waiting for a chance to talk to the Tea Party people about where we agree and where Mr. Johnson disagrees. People in the Tea Party really value the Constitution. I think they probably read the Constitution before they were 55 years old, which Mr. Johnson admitted. He just read it this year. And even though he made some comments originally about how the Patriot Act maybe had some problems, he fell into line with a Republican view, and he says he's for the Patriot Act. I was the only senator to vote against the Patriot Act because it invaded personal freedom, and the Tea Party people agree with me on that. I'll tell you what else they agree with me on. They thought those trade agreements that send our manufacturing jobs overseas were terrible. They devastated Wisconsin. Mr. Johnson disagrees. You know what he calls it? He calls those trade agreements and what they did to us creative destruction. Well, it's the creative destruction of Wisconsin families, including the families of Tea Party people. Tea Party people know that I stood against the Wall Street scam from day one, that I voted against TARP, that I voted against repealing the Glass-Steagall Act that kept these guys under some control. And I'll tell you something, since you mentioned that average citizens should be able to participate in the political process, I think Tea Party people might want to remember that Mr. Johnson would be the 70th millionaire in the United States Senate. I'm one of the only members of the United States Senate who isn't a millionaire. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with there being millionaires in there. But there ought to be a little economic diversity in the Senate, and I try to provide it.
Thank you, Mr. Feingold. Our next question, pardon me? Go ahead.
I just wanted, neither of you touched on gun rights, Second Amendment rights. Can you just give your thoughts on that?
This is a follow-up, 30 seconds.
The Second Amendment and the right to bear arms has been a passion of mine throughout my life. I carry the Constitution around with me, basically in the car wherever I am. And even when I was in college, I felt that it should be an individual right. And that's why I was so pleased to fight throughout my adult life to make that happen. And it has. In fact, I helped write Wisconsin's constitutional right to bear arms. I have no confusion about this. I strongly oppose gun registration and gun licensing. And when Mr. Johnson was first asked the question, he said he would support licensing or perhaps registration of guns, although he changed his mind later.
Mr. Johnson, 30 seconds.
Sure. First of all, I will be a staunch defender of the Second Amendment. I think my endorsement by the NRA proves that. Senator Feingold, of course, has voted for every anti-gun justice on the Supreme Court today. So I think that's really kind of what really shows his true stripes. I do need to correct the record here. I have read the Constitution repeatedly through my life. I've carried around a pocket Constitution for years. I've commented Too, as I said before I started this race, I read it 5 or 6 times to get prepared for this race. I started reading the Federalist Papers for a second time. This is a totally false statement that Senator Feingold had.